Hello,
How are you?
doing well. How are you?
Good, man. I'm good. Life is good.
How's the week?
It was good. Busy.
Hmm.
We had a pretty big order in for Friday. Uh,
Oh,
it was well big for our standards. It was like 35 rolls plus chicken. It was like $100 worth of chicken, and it was very stressful. It was our we have our like the new way that we're rolling our kimbap is really aesthetic and is really pretty. But logistically, it's hard because if we have to get rid of all the moisture in our ingredients, otherwise the seaweed will tear.
mhm.
And so we made all of our rolls, and when we were trying to cut it, it started tearing on us. And so
Oh,
Jimmy and I did not have a good time trying to wrap that up because we're on a time crunch because we had to deliver it by a certain time.
mm,
So it was a mess. We had a lot to learn from it, and we definitely, is good. And we're doing some more testing tomorrow.
mm.
Did some filming today. Um, Very stressful though, and it's that it always goes to show. It's like you think you're prepared, and like we do all this stuff to get ready for it, but then game time, there's a lot of stuff you can learn from it because it never turns out the way that you expect it to.
Mm. You know, wow. Congrats on the big order.
Thank
What
you. Thank you.
is Chicago pretty humid, or was it the cooking that made it more?
It's the cooking. In fact, I think Chicago's kind of dry right now. I don't know. My
Mm.
skin, I could also because I don't wear gloves when I should, when I like wash dishes and stuff. But no, I don't think it's that. I think it's just like as an example, something. It basically every time we do something and like we try to take a little bit of a shortcut, it always ends up backfiring on us. As an example, this time around, the carrots were the problem because this is really detailed, but the carrots essentially normally when we cook it, we air dry it, right? So like we just spread it out on a big pan and we just let it air dry because it's hot enough so it evaporates pretty quickly. The problem this time around is normally we do it on different pans if there's too much, but this time I was like, oh, I'm just going to try to do it all in one pan. So I stacked all the carrots on top of each other. The problem is when you stack that much on top of each other, when it evaporates, it doesn't go into the air, it goes into the other carrots that are on top of it.
Mm,
And so it didn't fully, it looked dry on the outside, but
mm,
it started leaking water. And
mm,
so it was a whole shenanigan. And so when you roll it that tight, right? Like when you roll it that tight, and then there's any sort of moisture that gets into the seaweed, because right now we're not putting rice on the outside.
mm,
It just starts tearing really easily, especially when it's rolled that tight and like there's a lot of pressure.
yeah,
Any sort of gap will widen. And
mm,
so the moment we started seeing that was after we rolled all of them. So we were like, oh, that's not good. And so
mm.
we ended up having to like put band-aids on the kimbap with the seaweed. If you wet seaweed and you just put it on top, it basically covers up any tears and things like that. But then it's like the whole thing because you have to wait for that to dry a little bit, but we didn't have time. So like we were trying to cut it, but then it's still wet a little bit, and then it's like starts slipping and then it tears again. It was a whole
Yeah.
thing. But anyway, it was good. It was a learning experience. We were very tired from that. So Saturday we took the day off. Just did some other things like I had work at Mr. Tiger and things like that. And then today we met in the early afternoon and we did some filming. So we're still doing the social media. We're asking basically for a lot of help from different people that we know. And so we have a friend that does photography and does some specific type of editing. And so we're getting him to help us out as well, which is really exciting. So a lot of stuff in the works. Our logo is also closer to being finalized.
Oh.
Um, so a lot of stuff coming up in the
Mm,
works. It's still not quite finalized. It's just taking us a lot. I think the branding and logo piece
mm,
definitely takes a little bit longer than we had anticipated. Um, but it's everything's a learning process, and we're making good progress. It's like everything's just incremental process or
mhm,
incremental progress. So
mhm.
one step at a time.
Yeah. No, that's good to hear. Yeah. Since we've been kind of talking about kimbap, yeah, I just yesterday I tried making some kimbap at home.
Yeah.
So I kind of understand the process that you go through, of course. Yours is much more probably put together and thought over, but yeah, I realized how time consuming it is. Like just from preparing the ingredients and cooking them and then like having all it set up and then you start like rolling and then yeah, just because there's so many components that could go wrong. Let's say the rice might not be, the consistency you want it, depending on how you kind of also, you know, season your ingredients, that kind of changes your kimbap as well. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, it's hard to, since it's still in the early stages, but like, what are some ways in your head that you're trying to keep quality, what do you call it, like quality assurance, for your products?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's just a lot of testing, right? Like
Mm,
when we do the orders, we learn a lot because we're under a time crunch and we have to get a certain amount done. So
mm,
like there's things that come up in those moments where you just can't like you can't replicate that when you're trying to do testing because when we
yeah.
do testing, it's like we make small limited batches anyway.
Mm,
So like so we have a couple like we had a debrief meeting, right, where we were like, okay, what went wrong on Friday? What are
mm,
some things that we need to do to address it, and what are we going to test tomorrow? So one of the things is obviously the carrots, like draining out all the water and making sure we have, all the air dry, like we can air dry it correctly. And a part of that has to do with like making investments into equipment and things like that, right?
mm,
Like we were thinking buying some things that like buying some containers that can drain out water, right? This seems like a very obvious thing, but
mm,
at the scale that we're trying to like when you try to scale something up, I think there's new considerations and more investments that you have to make in order
mm,
to make things run a little bit more efficiently. Um, there's another piece to it where it's just like, there's changes that we have to make, I think, fundamentally to the Kimbap as it is right now, because as aesthetic as it looks right now, I think functionally it just is not going to hold.
mm,
And so maybe there's like a way, and this is what we're trying tomorrow, is like you put a thin layer of egg around the outside as sort of like a protective filament. Or because now we're using purple rice, maybe we just do the same kimbap, like the normal kimbap, just with purple rice on the outside.
mm,
Um, we're not sure yet, but we need to make a way to we need to find a way to make it work because like, ordinary kimbap is great and people recognize it for what it is. But like if we
mm,
want to stand out in any sort of way and make ourselves a little bit different from any competition that could potentially be coming our way,
mm,
then we need to make ours so unique and different enough where people recognize our kimbap as our own. And there's like a value proposition in that sense.
mm. I think this is a question I think might suit for the situation you're currently in, and things change over time. But I guess currently, then, if you had to prioritize, let's say the design, or would you prioritize the design or kind of more of the functionality of like how you are able to create the kimbap. Let's say, you were talking about the protective layer, making sure that, the quality you're outputting, no um, minor hiccups in the process compared to maybe like a unique design. What
Yeah.
would you kind of prioritize at this current moment?
Yeah, I would say it has to be functionality. And
Mm,
what I would say is both are really important. The
hmm
visuals and the aesthetic, as much as I like food, as much as it is about the flavor and the taste, it's a lot of it of the aesthetics, right? Of the smell. And like there's a lot of different things besides just the things that come from our like taste buds and things like that.
mm,
I think what maybe the correct phrase is I don't want to give up any sort of functionality for design, meaning
mm,
if we do implement something where it looks really pretty, but just functionally and like operationally, it doesn't make any sense because it either takes too long or it costs too much or it's not, then we can't do it, right? I think as much as we'd like to focus on the design and making it aesthetically pleasing, I think we have to be able to scale it up and we have to be able to
mm,
make hundreds of rolls at some point.
mm,
And so I would say functionality comes first. With that said, right now we just need to figure out a way to make it work. And there's always a way to make it work. We just have to get a little bit more creative and do some more testing. And
mm.
so that's what we are doing tomorrow.
Yeah. Since we're talking about making things work, adjusting, and also potentially in the future, kind of scaling things. What are some of your thoughts on how you kind of invest or allocate your current funds? And do you have like a process that you go through with Jimmy when you're kind of talking about those?
Yeah, I would say Jimmy is more of our sort of financial person in our dynamic. I probably spend way too much money on a lot of things. I think Jimmy is much more practical, and from
Mm,
a like a business, from a small business perspective, his way of thinking is much better. Just because there's a lot of things that we don't need to be spending money on. At the same time, though, I think both of us realize that there are investments that we do need to make, and so we're
mm,
not shy about making those.
mm,
I think the burden of proof to making those investments just needs to be there for us, meaning we need to basically we're learning from our mistakes. So like at what point do we say, okay, this mistake is going to cost us too much and we need to make some sort of upgrade? Or in order for us to scale up, like in order for us to make 100 rolls, like this is our roadblock, this is the bottleneck. And so therefore, in order for us to overcome that bottleneck, we have to make an investment into something, whether that be
mm.
resources or whether that be like whatever resources that may be, whether that's equipment or even more people.
You know? I like this dynamic where I feel in any group, sometimes you need that visionary who keeps pushing the boundaries for further, exponential growth. But sometimes you also need someone who is a bit more realistic and practical and brings you back home to say, okay, like, are we going way too off? And that's the kind of combination that I'm currently seeing. Could you give me like an example of like how let's say if you were thinking of um investing in a potential tool right now? Like, what will be the kind of dynamic or conversation that happens?
Yeah, this is a very small thing, but one of the things is we need another knife.
Yeah.
And this is again, this is such a small thing, and like you would think, like obviously you need knives and pot hands and things like that, but it hasn't been a problem so far, right? But on Friday, we realized when we're in a time crunch, both of us need to start cutting the kimbap.
Mhm.
And so, in order for us to do that, we need two knives, and we didn't have two knives; we had one. And so that's something where I think both of
Yeah.
us were like, "This is the, like we need to get another knife. Like that's
Mhm.
something we need to buy." Later down the line, there's a kimbap cutting machine in Korea, and it's
Oh,
beautiful. It's
oh.
you put the thing in, it just slides up and it cuts it for you, and then it's no problem, no hassle. You're all done.
Mm.
That's I think from last time I checked, it's about $3,000 per machine.
Oh, dang.
Which but that again, so something like that would require a higher burden of proof, right? If we run into a problem where we have to roll hundreds in a day and we're like, okay, we need and our bottlenecks is cutting because cutting
Mhm.
actually takes up a pretty large chunk of time,
Mhm.
then maybe we say we need to do that.
Mm.
So far though, like that's not that's I think a step too far, right? Like that's not an investment we're willing to make yet, but it is
Mm.
in radar. It is sort of in our scope of
Mm.
if we're trying to make our process very, as much efficient as possible. And I think what's nice about Keep is you can automate a lot of pieces in it, right?
Mm.
There's a lot of things you can automate with it. Once we figure out if our product is good enough to get traction and demand, and a large part of that has to do with marketing and advertising. If we find that that is the case and we get enough to run an actual business, then we will make the necessary investments, I think, when the time rolls. But
Mm.
again, it's the same. Our fundamentals is like, is there enough demand, and how do we
Mm.
test if there's enough demand? And at a certain point, right? Even if you do a couple things and you find out that there's good enough demand, you just have to sort of commit and pull the trigger on certain things, and we will. It's just in order to get there, I think we just need a little bit more proof in our minds that this is going to work.
Mhm. No, makes sense. In terms of ingredients, has it changed with the new designs and
Yeah, not much. I will say
mm.
our rices now we use purple rice instead of white rice.
Mm.
I will say not a ton has changed, and there's the reason for that is because we actually like the flavor and the taste. We want to keep some of that traditional and authentic to what Korean people are used to. So we don't want to go off the rails and be like, here's like a bunch of new ingredients, which I'm sure would taste lovely in kimbap. But for now, this the basics that we have. We want those flavors to be true to what you can expect and what
Mhm.
people want and what people know of kimbap.
Mhm.
Later down the road, what I imagine is we can do limited time offerings of certain products
Mm.
and just have those be fun, right? And then like that can be whatever. And maybe that's more appealing. We can do like a dessert kimbap at some point. I
Mm.
don't know. But there's a lot of things that you can do with it. And maybe that's the route we go, or maybe like the route is you can customize it and we can make it really customizable for you. Like we're not exactly sure yet. We will see what people's feedback is and what people
Mhm.
actually want.
Mm.
Then we will cater to what people actually want. Because for as much as we think we know,
Mm.
we won't know until we actually do it.
Mm. Valid, valid. How'd you get your the big order this Friday? How
Yeah,
does
so
that happen?
yeah, everything has been by word of mouth. It's been what's been really great, and I think something in and of itself for us is every time we do a catering order, the responses have been really positive. And so somebody from the same group or like somebody within that group will reach, we'll get our contact information and reach back out with another order for another gathering.
Mm.
And so far that's been the case for all of our orders, which has been great. So there's a little bit of momentum coming from that, but I think we obviously need to find a way to again we need to find a way to keep that going and keep that traction and momentum going. So there's a lot of there's some things in the works with like this video editing and content for social media, and hopefully we are still debating whether a pre-order works best or if we should do like a pop-up. We're not exactly sure yet, but we have, we sort of have a deadline of when we're trying to work backwards from and where we're trying to go. Um, so yeah,
Any
we're just going.
any commonalities you see amongst the type of event they're catering, asking for the catering for?
No, it's just like bigger gatherings, and a few of my friends have ordered as well
Mm.
for some of the larger parties that they've been having.
Mm.
Um, and it's always helpful. Like if they're close friends, we'll obviously ask for feedback and how things went. Generally, it's been very positive so far.
Mm.
We're also working on a couple sauces that we think will go well with kimbap. Um, but yeah, it's been great. I mean, it's been a lot of fun. I'm The schedule is sometimes a little bit tough just because I am working a couple other jobs at the moment part time. But I'm trying to dedicate as much time as I can to this, and obviously the goal is this will get enough business that I can quit the other part-time jobs and then just focus on this at some point.
Mm.
But in order for that to happen, we need to actually start really just pumping out kimbap rolls and
Yeah,
chicken.
yeah. I mean, last week I remember you were a bit under the weather. Any new changes to your routine, scheduling, trying to balance things right now?
Yeah, there's two things. I'm eating a lot more and
Mm.
I'm trying to get more sleep. I think it's those two things because when I work in those restaurants, things get very hectic and now my eating schedule is all messed up because usually I can't eat during like the normal eating periods because that's usually when I have to work.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is like I usually wake up and have a pretty big breakfast, and then I'll go to the fast casual place for lunch and work. And then at 3 or 4 p.m., I'll usually have another big meal, and then I'll get ready for dinner service. And then usually at around 11 or 12, when I get done with work, I will. Nowadays, I've been trying to eat something. I know it's not ideal because I don't like to eat something right before I go to bed, but just in terms of calories, I think it's just easier to have something before I go to bed so that the next day my stomach doesn't feel great, but like I feel a little bit better.
Mm. Yeah. No, that's super important.
Yeah.
Cool, cool. Any new happenings in the restaurant that you've observed lately, or
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot of this is like is learnings, but also things that I'm feeling and
mm,
like. First off, it's fun. I really like the hospitality industry as a whole. Like my experiences in the food restaurant and especially in the restaurant industry has been
mhm,
very positive so far.
mhm,
And now that I'm serving full time at night, I'm learning the different dynamics of different people and
mhm,
how best to cater to each type of person that I see. And a large part of it is trial and error. I spilled a drink for the first time
mm.
on a guest. Thankfully, the guest is a very close friend of mine, and so you let your guard down for just a split second, and then an accident happens, and everything was fine. But I was like,
Mhm,
oh, it's not great, but I'm bound to make mistakes, and I learned that
mm,
this is probably a very obvious thing for people who work in restaurants and serving, but like when you have a tray full of drinks, you need to give the tall ones out first. Like there's two things. You need to give the ones that are tall first, and you also need to order the drinks in a way where the heavier ones are closer to you. And so in the case that you lift the drink out, it doesn't topple towards the guest. If it topples, it comes towards you.
mm,
And usually, like, so that way the tall ones are in the front, right? So you can get rid of them and
mm,
you don't have any accidents happening, waiting to happen. And you always should give it out from the front to the back, right? So that you lift it out so the weight distribution
mhm,
is even. I will say some of the dishes, because you use a hot stone plate, is sometimes pretty heavy. And so when you put two of those on a platter, it's like it's hard to balance. And so there's very little things, right? These are super minor details, but the drinks thing is kind of big, and like there's a limit on how many drinks I can carry in a tray for now because I'm not that experienced.
Mm.
But yeah, so I I did that, and then it was a very sweet drink with a lot of sugar, so cleanup was a little bit of a pain. So but that was a pretty big moment where I was like, wow, even if I'm in a big rush,
Mm.
just can't lose sight of the like the details are important. They're not everything, but the details do matter.
Mhm. Mhm. Do you find any commonalities between the two different type of restaurants, or tell me more about like if there's any similarities between those two, or maybe differences that you see in a fast casual and a more high
Yeah,
end.
I mean, there's a ton of similarities, right? One is just like the prep amount of prep that you have to do. Basically, at the fast casual place, if you're not actually working to deliver orders, you're just doing prep for the next day and prep for the ingredients that you need. So like you're cutting up vegetables, you are, cooking the sweet potatoes, you're doing a bunch of different stuff. Like you're cutting up all the salad mix and things like that. You're like getting ready for service, and
Mm.
making sure that every service at any time has enough ingredients to keep going.
Mm.
It's the same thing at the full service restaurant, but I don't do the prep, right? Because I don't work in the back, but
Mm.
the prep is meticulous and it takes so long because the list is super long. The, after service is over, it's not actually over for the cooks in the back. They have to take stock of the inventory, like how much is left, how much do you need to buy, like what do you need to prep for the day after, so that the people who prep in the morning of, they
Mm.
know exactly what they need to get ready.
Mm.
Um, So it is it's a very intense process, and like if you mess up, it costs you quite a bit. And so like again, automation and things like that, right? Tech is amazing, and there's a lot of things that you can do with it, but a lot of these processes are still very manual, right? Like we're literally taking a checklist and going, okay, what do we have? Like we're auditing what we have, and there's no machine or an AI yet that can do that for you. I'm sure there is maybe out there, but a lot of this process is just time intensive, and a lot of prep. Like basically, in order to serve mass quantities of food, the more prepared you are, the better. Otherwise, you're gonna screw up.
Mm. Since most of your hours are probably facing the customers who are coming to the restaurant, do you still get opportunities to kind of look into maybe the back end inventory stuff, or that's
I
not the
do.
case?
I do. I mean, I don't actively participate in it, but
Mm.
I like because the front and back, like we are separated in the full service, but we're also
Mm.
pretty connected. So like
Okay.
we see everything that's going on. We
Mm.
hear conversations, like you see the things that are on the whiteboard and things like that. For the fast casual place, you're doing both at the same time. So you're the back of house and front of house is sort of merged together.
Mm.
And so the prep you are doing, basically it's all combined. And so you get a closer look, and like there's a grayer line between what is, front of house and back of house.
Mm.
I personally, I really like working at the full service restaurant. It feels very much, the owners are, it's a Korean place. Like it's very close to what I imagine, a place that I want to open is like if I were to do just Korean food.
Mm.
Um, and it's a lot of fun. The team is great. They have a great team, and like I'm getting closer to the team, and like it's a very team environment. Like because basically in order to make the service a successful night, everybody has to work together, right? Like and everyone is dependent on each other. Like
Mm.
moments where I get very overwhelmed because there's only usually five or so tables that I'm managing or serving. But we also, sometimes we set the tables, we clear the tables. Obviously, we have runners and bussers that do that for us as well. But if they're busy, then like we make sure that we can help in and plug in wherever possible. But then if we get seated two or three tables in a row at the same time, then like the timing of when we take the drinks order, and then the timing of when we take their food order, and then taking that back and then putting it into our system, and then make sure that everyone has enough water. Like it's just a lot to manage at once, and like it's pretty easy to get overwhelmed. I definitely still get overwhelmed quite a bit, especially when
Mm.
things get really busy. So the team effort piece is really important, and that sort of culture and setting that
Mm.
tone really starts with the owners, and they are super hands-on, they're super friendly. I mean,
Mm.
they are very much like we are going to get this done, and like we're going to make this happen.
Yeah. No, that's super cool. I mean, having a great culture, especially in a service business, I feel is super important.
Yeah.
One thing that I just kind of popped in my head is In the past, you've had your externship at Wingstop. It's a very different type of food business, different food, also different preparation, different kind of operational system as well. Like, do you feel like your experience there has helped you understand some parts of the restaurant business right now that you're working in?
So I not right now. What I will say is working at Wingstop was fantastic because first off, the people there I really liked working with. They're some of the nicest and hard. I think I've said this before, but there's some really incredible people. But also, I think the process, like it's like the end state almost of where I want to be. Right. If you imagine
Mm.
Wingstop is massive, like they're billions of dollars worth, they're worth billions, right? And
Yeah.
they're massive. Like to me, that's like the end goal of where I want some of these places to be. I don't know if I'm going to franchise or I don't know what the right method is, but like that's where I want to be. And so now I see a company that's at that size and how they function and how they work and how they think about things, how the company is run and how the company is organized. Not everything is perfect. Nothing is perfect, and everything is improving, and everyone's trying to make improvements, and everyone's working really hard. But that doesn't change whether you are a 2,500 unit mass, chain, or whether that you are a mom and pop, just getting your feet off the ground. Like the base root is really in the people and how hardworking you are. And no system is going to be perfect, but like if you try to implement some things, obviously the bigger you get, the harder it is to implement certain changes. But like when you're small, you have a lot of flexibility, right? And I think this goes fundamentally to the idea of if you're a small startup, this is your advantage, right? You can move fast, you can change fast, you can adapt, you can do whatever you want, you can set the systems that you want. When you're bigger, obviously you can't move as quickly, but the once you do make the changes, your impact is that much greater.
Mhm.
And so I think that was really cool to see because I actually saw both ends, right?
Mhm.
I will say starting something is very difficult. I think I'm sure everybody knows. It is much more difficult than I had anticipated, and we haven't even actually done much
Mhm.
yet. Like we haven't actually, like we haven't launched anything officially yet. Like we're not we haven't done anything officially where like we should feel this way yet, I think. But there's an element of even for the place that I work at for full service, the restaurant, they are learning things on the go, right? Like the idea is you set a base for yourself and it is enough to get you up and running. And then you make improvements as you go. And like you will, if what you are producing is good, and
Mhm.
if the marketing that you have is good, then like you will be fine. And you just need to make improvements. There's a lot, like we stress out sometimes because we think this is like a big deal and it's a huge deal. And for the most part, it is a big deal and you need to fix some things, but it's not that big of a deal, and like you'll be fine. You just need to fix it, and then you have much more leeway than I think you give
Mhm.
yourself credit for.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely agree. And I think one thing it seems really great on your end is that around you, you have a lot of great people who are supporting you, helping out in ways they can to market and also in areas that we probably don't know or helping you different ways. Um, I think one thing I've heard from other people working at their jobs or even like leading a company is that sometimes it's hard to instill, let's say, an owner's mindset. Are you any lessons learned from your end about those ends? I know currently it's most of your friends who are
Yeah.
kind of taking time out of their own personal day to help you out, but any lessons on that end?
I don't know if there's lessons that I would say I've learned through this period so far in particular.
Hmm.
I think there's always the thought of it's always a thing, right? It's like the agent versus principal, whatever that thing is, where it's like if you're an owner, it's very different than when you're an
Yeah,
employee because your incentives are always different. So
different.
the
Yeah.
idea is if you can somehow align your incentives
Hmm.
to be, and that's why I always like profit sharing is a thing. That's why when you vest options in stocks and things like that, that the whole point is to instill, like, if your performance is good as a business, then you will also be compensated similarly.
Hmm.
I think on a much more personal level, it's also just about how do you find people that can see what you see, right?
Hmm.
And like what we like to call a vision. I don't really know if there's like a big vision around what we're doing. Like I'm sure there is, but like we just have to get people to buy into the idea of what we're doing.
Hmm.
And if we can do that, then they will stay committed, right?
Hmm.
Like there's no way in my mind there are some people that are out there that are just working their day-to-day jobs and they're okay with that
Mhm,
and
mhm,
like that's cool,
mhm.
but those people aren't likely going to be the ones that are like, oh, in my free time let me try to find this other business that I can help because I'm really
Yeah.
those are not the same kinds of people, and that's okay. uh,
Hmm.
I think our job is to figure out who, like right now is all our friends, and we really like our friends. They're talented, they're smart. We do right now no one's getting paid, so we're asking for a lot of help. And we are not afraid to ask for help. I think that's been one of my big things always is I am confident in what I can do. I'm not good at everything, right? There's no way. But there are things that I'm good at, and I am willing to learn whatever it is that I need to, because there's always things to learn.
Mm,
But there are also things that other people I think are better equipped to do. And it's sometimes it's easier because that person can focus their attention on this one thing to do.
mm,
And so I think there's like an art to it, right? And this is all the fundamentals of just managing and leading people, which aren't inherently the same thing. But
mm,
if you can find the right people, which I think is probably the biggest thing, and you did hire people that are right now they're all our friends, but like at the end of the day, when we start hiring people, we need to find the best talent that we can.
mm,
And then we need to, because we can't compensate, like we're not Google or anything, right? We can't pay you a lot. So the idea is like we're trying to build something. Like you want to jump on the ship with us and help us build it.
mm,
We'd love to have you, right? That's the idea. And we
mm,
need to see the direction in which we're sailing and get on board.
mm. Yeah, and part of it is, great marketing, great brand creation as well. Tell me a bit more. What's anything new from the marketing end this week?
Yes, we're wrapping up on our first video in terms of just like we finished the editing on it. We've
Mm,
shown it to a few people and we've gotten some really helpful feedback and we're implementing those. We filmed the second video today. We are going to film the third one, which is going to be more of a voiceover type,
mm.
sometime this week. We have a fourth video that we're going to film this weekend.
Wow.
And we are finishing, I think, a bit faster than we had expected, which is great. And so we're actually going to put more videos on the backlog. And so we're going to prioritize some other videos that we had on the list. And we are going to try to get those done as well before that May timeline. I think we just want to give ourselves enough buffer once we actually start launching.
Mm,
uh, to make sure that like we give ourselves
mm.
enough room to breathe once we start launching to prepare the next set of content that we want to get out.
Yeah.
And I mean, we have a lot of ideas. I think there's a lot of things that we can do with it, and we just need to make sure like in that time, I think for me personally is to find the time to make sure that our food and our product and our operations is just as tight as we can get it
Mm,
before we lean too far into just doing market, like, because the idea is not,
mm,
I'm not interested in becoming like an influencer, right? That's not the point. It's if I can market my business effectively, right?
mhm,
And the way to do that, right? They're interlinked. So I can't just sit here and be like, oh, I don't want to be a content. The whole point of this is so that we can get enough traction, right? And so a part of that means if we want to do marketing, then I have to be able to sell my story and ultimately myself,
mm.
um, to the general public and make it fun, make it interesting, right? I think there's a lot of people out there that want to quit their jobs and pursue something that they think is worth pursuing.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's really hard to do that. And I think I was in a position, very fortunate to be in a position where I could. And the risk to me right now in this point in life is as probably as minimal as it can get. So I'm willing to make that jump. And if people want to, see that path and support me along the way, that's fantastic. And who knows where life will take me. But I think I'm just more risk tolerant than I think I initially thought I was. And
Wow.
like I always tell people, I think once you make the decision to commit,
Mm.
life becomes a lot easier. Always the decision making up to the point where you say, I'm going to do this,
Mm.
that's really tough.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. There's a lot of self-doubt and sometimes just scared inside some of the thoughts you have. And
Yeah, I agree.
sometimes,
And sometimes what's been really helpful is just I don't think about it, right?
yeah.
I literally just there are many times where I wake up and I'm like, holy shit, like what did I just do? I just gave up a incredible career in a very stable profession and I could have gone to a lot of different places and like I'm sure I would have had deliver like I would have had value in somewhere else and like I had value to give, but then I just sort of said it's not for me right now. And made the jump, and I don't know if what I'm doing is right. I won't know, and like we're just giving it our best shot.
Mhm.
We are learning a ton as we go, right? And like I think that's the best attitude for me personally to have. That's what I think is just to give yourself enough grace to say, if you mess up, just learn from it and move on. As long as
Mhm.
we don't mess up to the point where we feel so disheartened by it that we just
Mhm.
don't want to go on. Like this Friday was I think our first testament to like we were very close to just being like maybe we just refund the whole thing and just call it, or like just give them a couple less rolls and just be like sorry we couldn't make it. um, we were very close, but we didn't like we stuck with it. It didn't look pretty. I will say some of those roles just weren't pretty, and like it was a bit of a mess, but we still got it done, and we debriefed about it, and we'll get better. But yeah, I mean, it's just I think it's just a matter of not thinking about it too much, because I think the moment you give yourself too much time to think, then you start overthinking.
Mhm.
So instead, when I find myself thinking about those things, then it's usually like, okay, like what is it that I just have to do? Like I just have to do something. And then once you do something, then your attention goes to what you have to do. And so therefore you're not thinking about all the things of like, oh, like what if, and like, oh, am I not good enough? Is my product not good enough? Or like, is my marketing bad? Like I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. There's a quote by Jeff Bezos. I think it was something like, "Oh, if you're stressed, you're probably just not taking action
Yeah.
in one of
Yeah.
your decisions." So,
Yeah. You just have to do it. And if you are sometimes there's a difference between like just feeling bad and feeling down and feeling
mm,
anxious
mm,
versus like there's decisions to be made. I
yeah.
think especially with decisions to be made, then you just have to make a decision and do it and try it and figure out if it works or not.
Mm,
When you're feeling anxious, I think it's similar where like if you do something, you take your mind off of it.
hmm
Um, but to me, it's a little bit different, right? Because like in those cases, it's not you have to do one or the other. You just have to do something, and like you just have to move. For me, what I find works the best is I just talk to somebody. Usually
mm.
that's and I'm just like, hey, like I'm not really sure, and then usually it's just like a couple things, like we just need to talk it out for like 2 sentences, and then we're fine, and we just move on.
And I think that's super important, especially for any founders or new business owners starting from zero and trying to scale it to one. Is that sometimes there are those kind of mental hiccups or obstacles that kind of hinder the way. But I think having a solid partner who you could talk through those kind of moments, I think is very special and very fortunate to have. So very
Yeah,
happy to hear that's the dynamic of both of you.
I agree, and I will say this is the fun part. I think one of the things that's good about us is that I think we are both of our perspectives is pretty we have level set, like we've level set, right? Like we haven't actually started yet. Like we are not public, right? So the actual intensity and things like that will pick up for sure. Our downs, I think, will be even more down, and like we'll get a lot more stressed, will require a lot more time. Now is honestly a lot of fun, right? It's like, oh, like what if we try this? What if we try? There's nothing that we can't do.
hmm
We just try this, we try that. Like you lose a little bit of sleep because you're working in those hours and doing this and doing that. But now is when we're supposed to be having fun, and we are having a lot of fun.
Great to hear. I think that's essential.
I agree.
Great. I guess to kind of wrap things up, if you could kind of rate the week of two different metrics. Number one, it's both out of 10. Number one is happiness. How happy were you this week? And number two, um, how, oh, there was one that I had in mind. I just forgot. Number one, it was out of 10, is how happy you are. And number two, um, how much, hmm, how would you rate the progress you've made? Um,
Oh,
or
yeah.
satisfied with the progress you've made? So both out of 10.
I will say I'm very happy. I'm very, very happy. I think maybe happy is like I feel very fulfilled in where I'm going. And so in that element, I would rate myself a 10. Like I'm very happy with where I'm going. I think the decision for me to have left the consulting job is the right one for me personally. And where I'm going and the industry that I'm entering in, I'm finding out that I'm really liking, and I think this is exactly where I want to be. This week in particular, I will say was frustrating for many reasons. I think one was because I was sick earlier in the week, and so I felt like we weren't making enough progress. And the Friday order, honestly, I think we were pretty, and we have some videos of it, which I think hopefully will be good. It was very frustrating. I think we were very ready for it. We were very excited for it, and then it just didn't end up panning out to be what we expected. So it was very
Mhm.
tough. In terms of the progress that we've made, I think we picked up towards the end of the week. But progress, I'd probably maybe say like a 5 or a 6. I think the
Mhm.
progress is always going to be a low number for me. I always feel like we need to move faster and there's more things we can do.
Mhm.
Um, so I think on that end, and this is just like a personal thing for me, but like we just need to move faster and we need to do more and like but you need to contrast that with like there's realistic expectations of how much you can get done
Mhm.
versus, you know, how much you want to get done and where you'd like to be.
Mhm.
I think for the most part, you can do a lot more than you would expect,
Mhm.
but it's still, I just don't know if I'm ever going to be happy with how fast we move.
Now that is the mindset to keep making progress. So I
Yeah.
think great. Yeah. Well, let's keep that in mind, and we'll come back to it next week and see how the next week also pans out.
Sounds good, Paul. It's good to chat.
Cool, cool, Michael. Have a great rest of your Sunday night, and we'll see you next week.
Sounds good, man. We'll chat soon.
Cool, cool.